It started like any other honeymoon. Bright sun, warm breeze, the kind of serenity that makes you forget the world exists outside that little bubble we built for ourselves. We just exchanged vows the night before, and I was feeling pretty good about everything. My wife, Sarah, was finally mine, or so I thought. We checked into a cozy little hotel by the beach, the kind that makes you feel like you're in a secluded paradise. But paradise has a funny way of turning into a nightmare overnight. The day after our wedding, I decided to take a quick shower before heading to breakfast. The room was quiet, just the distant hum of waves outside and my pulse pounding in my ears. I stepped into the bathroom, feeling the warm water hit my skin, trying to shake off the last of the wedding jitters. When I came out, the room looked normal at first glance, clothes folded on the chair, my suitcase still closed, Sarah sitting on the bed scrolling through her phone. But then I noticed something weird. A faint draft coming from behind the wall. I'd been in that hotel room earlier, and I was pretty sure there was no door or opening there before. My eyes caught a slight gap near the baseboard that looked off, almost like a latch or a hinge. My heart started racing a little. I leaned closer, pressing my fingers along the wall, feeling for anything unusual. That's when I noticed a tiny gap, just big enough to see inside if I peeked carefully. Curiosity got the best of me, and I crouched down, prying at the corner with my fingernails. I could feel the rough texture of the wall, the paint peeling slightly under my fingertips. Then, with a little effort, I managed to nudge the panel open, more out of instinct than anything else. And in that moment, I saw them. There was Sarah, her hair falling messily over her face, pressed against the chest of my best friend, Mark. Their lips were locked in a sloppy kiss. My stomach dropped like I'd been punched. I felt the sweat trickle down my back as my vision blurred for a second. I couldn't believe it. Not just a kiss, but the way they looked so intimate. I saw Mark's hand sliding under her shirt and Sarah's fingers tangled in his hair. My mind was a blur of shock, betrayal, and rage. I didn't want to make a sound. I just stared for what felt like an eternity. My fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I wanted to scream, to tear the wall open and drag them out. Instead, I tore myself away, retreating to the bathroom, my head pounding with questions I didn't have answers to. How long? How often? Was I just a joke to both of them? The worst part was the silence afterward. I couldn't even bring myself to talk to Sarah the rest of the day. I kept replaying the scene behind that false wall, my mind boiling with betrayal. Every breath felt heavy, like I was carrying a stone in my chest. I kept wondering what I did wrong, what I missed. But deep down, I knew this wasn't about me anymore. It was about her and Mark, and the twisted way they destroyed what I thought was real. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Their faces, their lips pressed together, the way Sarah's hand trembled as she touched him. I clenched my fists so hard I thought I'd break something. That's when I realized I had to plan something. I needed a way to make them pay for what they did. Not with fists or screams, but with something they'd never see coming. I started thinking about how to do it, something subtle but effective. Something that would hit them where it hurt without getting me thrown in jail or making a mess that I'd regret. I wanted to humiliate them, to leave them with the taste of betrayal and shame. I didn't have a clear plan yet, but I knew I couldn't let this go, not without a fight. The thought of that false wall still haunted me, and it made me realize I'd never trust Sarah again. Not truly. What I didn't realize at that moment was how deep the rabbit hole went, or how much they'd underestimate me. But I was just getting started. The next morning, I woke up with a pounding headache, but the adrenaline kept me alert. I couldn't let Sarah or Mark see how much they'd rattle me. I had to keep my cool, at least until I figured out my next move. I knew I couldn't confront them outright yet. That would only make things messier. No, I needed to be smart about this. Calm, calculated. I got up early, pretending everything was fine. Sarah was still asleep, her face peaceful in the morning light, an illusion I couldn't afford to buy into anymore. I kept my eyes on her, my mind racing through what I'd seen and what I wanted to do. I needed evidence, yes, but I also needed leverage, something they hadn't seen coming. While she was still dozing, I slipped out of bed quietly and went straight to the bathroom. I grabbed my phone and started reviewing the pictures I'd taken of the wall. The gap, the hole I'd opened was small but enough. I needed to look for something more concrete, proof that I could use later, proof that would hit them hard. I remembered the way Sarah's phone was sitting on the nightstand. Maybe I could find something there. I waited until she stirred, then casually asked, "Hey, did you grab your phone?" "I think I left mine in the bathroom yesterday." She reached over and handed it to me with a sleepy smile. I kept my face neutral as I quickly unlocked it. My heart hammered when I saw the message alert, an unread text from Mark. It was just a simple "can't wait to see you again tonight," but that was enough. I knew I'd uncovered enough to prove their affair was ongoing, not just a one-time slip-up. I needed more, though. I wanted to know how deep this went, how long they'd been at it. Later that day, I decided to go through Mark's social media. I knew the basics, but I needed specifics. I found a few photos from last week, him and Sarah together, smiling and relaxed. But what made my stomach turn was a string of messages lurking in the background. They were mostly innocuous, but then I found one that sent a shiver down my spine. "Can't wait to finally be yours tonight. Don't forget, the room's got that secret panel." That last line hit me like a freight train. They'd planned this. They knew about the false wall, about the secret space I'd discovered. That meant they'd been planning their little rendezvous for a while, probably using that hidden spot to hide their affair. That realization made me furious, but it also gave me clarity. I knew exactly how. I was going to turn this around. That night I sat alone in the hotel room, my mind working through every detail. I'd already decided to leave a little gift for them, something to make sure they'd never forget how thoroughly I was onto them. I'd get a camera, hide it in the room, and record everything. No more guessing, no more secrets. I'd catch them in the act, and then I'd confront them with undeniable proof. I also started planning my revenge. I wasn't going to just walk away from this. They'd played me for a fool, and I'd make sure they paid. I thought about how I could make this as humiliating for them as possible without crossing into something I'd regret later. I wanted them to understand that betrayal has consequences. The next step was setting everything up. I knew their pattern now. Mark and Sarah would meet that night, and I'd be ready. I'd have the evidence, and I'd make sure they knew I knew. I could already feel the knot tightening in my stomach, a mix of anger and determination. I'd never forget that false wall, that moment of betrayal, and I'd make sure they understood. I wasn't the one who got played. Everything was falling into place, and I could see the look in their eyes when they realized I'd caught them. That's what I wanted, to make them regret ever crossing me. And when it all happened, I'd finally reclaim some semblance of control, even if it meant tearing everything down first. I lit a cigarette and looked out at the darkening sky, thinking about how I'd execute the plan tomorrow. I already felt the weight of it. This was going to be the end of their little game. I was ready to see how far they'd go, and more importantly, how far I could go to make sure they paid. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw their faces, Sarah's lips pressed against Mark's, the way her hands trembled when she thought no one was watching. My stomach twisted with a mix of rage and anticipation. I knew they'd meet at the usual spot, the room with the hidden panel, like clockwork. I had spent most of the afternoon preparing. I brought a tiny camera, one of those small, discreet devices that could record everything. I'd hide it behind the false wall right where I'd seen them last. I also bought some cheap but convincing evidence, an old shirt I'd soaked in fake blood, a little note I crafted that said, "I know everything," just to make it clear I was onto them. I wanted them to feel terror, confusion, shame. The hotel room was dead silent except for the occasional distant sound of waves crashing below. I moved quietly, almost sneaking around, trying not to wake Sarah. When she finally fell asleep, I slipped out of bed, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. I tiptoed to the corner where that wall was, my palms sweaty, hands trembling as I placed the small camera so it could get a clear shot of whatever happened in that secret space. I double-checked the recordings to make sure everything was working, then took a deep breath. I knew I only had one shot at this. If they caught me, everything was over. If the camera caught them, I'd have irrefutable proof. As I waited, I felt a terrible weight in my chest, like a stone pressing down on my lungs. The door handle turned slowly. My stomach clenched. I held my breath and pressed record. Sarah slipped inside first, her face tense, eyes darting around the room. Mark followed behind, smirking as if he knew exactly what was happening. They didn't bother to hide it anymore. I saw Sarah whisper, "Are we safe here?" Followed by Mark's lazy grin. "Yeah, they never checked that panel, we're good." Then she leaned in and kissed him again, their bodies pressing together just like I'd seen before. That's when I saw Mark sliding his hand under her shirt and Sarah's fingers curling into his hair. I wanted to scream. Instead, I kept my hand steady, watching as they slipped into their secret world. I could hear every breath, every whisper, every movement. The camera captured it all, proof I could use to crush them. I felt a sick satisfaction knowing I was finally in control. They had no idea I was recording. When they finally pulled apart, Sarah looked around nervously. "This has to stay our secret," she whispered. Mark nodded. "Don't worry, I'll make sure nobody finds out." Then they gathered their things and slipped out, leaving the room quiet again. I stayed kneeling there, clutching the camera like a weapon, knowing I'd won this round. Back in my room, I reviewed the footage. Every detail was clear, their faces, the touches, the way Sarah's cheeks flushed when he kissed her. I felt something cold yet satisfying wash over me. They thought they were clever, fooling everyone with their little game. But I had caught them, and I had everything I needed. I thought about confronting Sarah right then, but I didn't want to ruin everything in a fit of rage. No, I needed to plan my next move carefully. I had the evidence and I knew how to use it. I sat there for a long time, staring at the footage, feeling the weight of what I'd done, what I was about to do. Tomorrow I'd make them regret crossing me. I'd see their faces when I told them I knew everything. And I'd make sure they understood the true meaning of betrayal. My mind was already racing through the next steps. I could almost taste the revenge, bitter and sweet at the same time. The room was silent except for the faint hum of the recorder. I clenched my fists and realized I was finally in the driver's seat. And I wasn't going to let them take any more from me, not without paying the price. The next morning I woke up feeling different, more focused, more determined. I had the evidence I needed, and now it was time to deliver the knockout punch. I kept my face calm as Sarah stirred, pretending everything was normal. Inside, though, my mind was racing. I knew tonight was the end game. Everything else was just waiting. I started my day by casually asking her, "Hey, did you sleep okay?" She shrugged, brushing her hair back. "Yeah, I think so, just a little tired." I nodded, acting like I didn't know her secret. I'd learned to hide my anger, but inside I was boiling. Every breath I took was a reminder that I'd caught her, that she'd betrayed me in the worst way. My plan was simple but ruthless. Confront her with the evidence I gathered, then give her a choice: own up or watch me walk away forever. I knew she'd try to deny it, probably lie her ass off, but I didn't care. I had proof. That camera, the messages, the shredded sense of trust, all of it. I had more than enough to crush her. I waited until late afternoon, when I knew Mark would be out for the day. Sarah was sitting on the balcony, staring at the ocean but not really seeing it. I sat next to her, my voice steady but cold. "Sarah, I found something yesterday, something I think you need to see." She looked at me nervously, her eyes darting away. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and pressed play on the footage. Her face twisted as she recognized herself caught on camera. Her lips parted slightly as she realized I'd seen everything. Mark's face appeared before her, smirking like he was proud of what they'd done. "You thought you could hide this," I said quietly, "but I know the truth now, and I don't think you can deny it anymore." Her shoulders trembled as she looked at the screen. "That's not what it looks like," she finally whispered. "Oh, I think it's pretty clear," I shot back. "You and Mark sneaking around behind my back. While I was out trying to make this trip special for us, you two were busy screwing around. Did you really think I'd never find out?" My voice cracked slightly, but I refused to sound weak. She looked down, tears pooling in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to happen." "Save it," I interrupted. "You knew exactly what you were doing, and Mark, don't bother to deny it. I saw the messages, I know everything." I paused, feeling the weight of her silence. "Honestly, I don't even know what I want to do right now, but I do know this isn't something I can forgive." She broke down then, tears streaming down her face. "Please, I made a mistake. It meant nothing. I was stupid." "Too late," I said sharply. "You made your choice, and I made mine. You're out of my life now. That's the only thing that makes sense." My words felt cold, but they were true. I'd reached the end of my patience. I stood up and looked her in the eye. "You can pack your things and leave today. Here's the key," I said, holding it out. Take whatever's yours. I want nothing to do with the woman who slept with my best friend behind my back. She reached out, but I stepped back. No, I don't want to hear anymore, just go. She hesitated, then slowly took the key, her hands trembling. I'm sorry, she whispered, voice breaking. You deserve better. Yeah, I said coldly, I do, and now I'm going to get out of here too. I'll find a way to start over without you. I turned away, feeling the heaviness in my chest, knowing I just cut off the most important part of my life, but it was the only way. As she gathered her things, I stepped outside, feeling the sea breeze on my face. I watched her disappear down the hallway, her figure small and broken. I was finally free, but the ache in my chest was still there. Still, I knew I'd done the right thing. I went to the front desk, handed over the keys, and told them I was leaving early. I didn't want to linger, didn't want to look back. As I drove away from the hotel, I could feel the weight of everything lifting, replaced by a strange sense of clarity. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge. It's about knowing when to walk away and taking back control. That's what I'd done today. I turned betrayal into my own victory, and I knew deep down I'd be better off without her. The drive away from the hotel felt surreal. The ocean was shimmering in the late afternoon light, but all I could focus on was the gnawing emptiness in my chest. I'd done what I thought was necessary, confronted her, showed her I knew the truth, and handed her the keys to leave. Yet somehow, it didn't feel like enough. I kept replaying the scene in my head, the look on her face, the way her voice trembled, as if she'd known this moment was coming. I pulled into a small roadside diner, the kind with cracked vinyl seats and a greasy smell that somehow felt comforting. I needed a moment to breathe, a place to think about what came next. I ordered a coffee, black, and stared out the window as traffic buzzed past. The bitterness of the bitter brew matched the taste I still had in my mouth: betrayal, anger, and a strange sense of relief. I knew I couldn't stay in that hotel. I'd been foolish to believe in a fairy tale, but now I was finally awake. I destroyed the illusion, and the real work had just begun. I had to figure out how to rebuild, how to move past the wreckage she left behind. I told myself I'd be better off without her, but a part of me still wondered how I'd ever trust again. A few minutes later, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the number I'd been contemplating all day. My hand still felt a little shaky, but I dialed it anyway. It was a lawyer's number I'd found online, someone who specialized in affairs, betrayals, and messy divorces. I didn't want a drawn-out fight, but I wanted to make sure everything was settled cleanly. No more secrets, no more lies, just a clean break for good. When the lawyer picked up, I kept it simple. I need to file for divorce. Fast. No fuss, no drama, just get me out of this mess. Understood, she said briskly. I'll prepare the papers. Do you want to serve her in person, or should I handle it? Just do it, I said. Send them over. I want her gone, plain and simple. I hung up, feeling a small flicker of satisfaction. It was a concrete step, a way to finalize the wreckage she'd left behind. I'd take her to court if I had to. I'd make sure she paid for her betrayal one way or another. I knew this wasn't just about the affair. It was about reclaiming my dignity, my sanity, and my future. Later that evening, I sat alone in a cheap motel room I'd booked nearby. I poured myself a drink, not to numb the pain, but to celebrate my small victory. I was finally taking control again. I had the evidence, the papers, the plan. I was ready to cut ties and start over. I reflected on everything that had happened. How I'd trusted her, how she deceived me, how Mark had betrayed our friendship. It all felt like a nightmare I'd wake up from someday. But for now, I had to focus on the next step. The divorce, the closure. I knew that once I signed the papers, the chapter with her would be officially over. As I looked out the window at the darkening sky, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge or betrayal. It was about finding my own strength, about restoring my sense of self after everything she'd taken from me. I'd come through the storm, battered, yes, but still standing. And I was going to prove that I could live without her, even if it meant starting from scratch. Tomorrow, I'd complete the divorce. I'd hand over the signed papers, and finally, I'd be free. The final step to closing this chapter. And when I did, I made a promise to myself. I'd never let anyone betray me that way again. I'd rebuild, stronger than before, and learn to trust on my own terms. That's the real victory. The day I signed those divorce papers felt like a weight finally lifting off my shoulders. I grabbed the envelope from the lawyer's office, each signature feeling like a small victory over everything I'd been through. As I walked out of that building, I felt a strange mixture of relief and emptiness, like I'd finally cleared the wreckage but still had to learn how to breathe again. Driving back home, I noticed the little things, the way the sky looked unusually clear, the crisp air, even the distant sounds of life going on around me. It all felt different now, as if I'd stepped out of a long, dark tunnel. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to think about the future, not the betrayal, not the lies, not the false walls she hid behind. When I finally got home, I unlocked the door with the keys I'd handed her that morning. Everything inside was exactly as I'd left it, clothes still folded, the quiet hum of the house just beginning to settle. I took a deep breath and looked around, realizing that I had nothing here that tied me to her anymore. No memories worth holding onto, nothing but the empty space she'd occupied. I went straight to the living room, sat down on the couch, and stared at nothing in particular. My mind kept replaying the last few days, the shock, the confrontation, the evidence, the final handshake of separation. It all played out like a horrible movie I'd be glad to forget. But I also felt something new, an odd sense of clarity. I'd been betrayed badly, yes, but I was still here, still standing. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the small recorder I'd hidden in the hotel room. I played back the footage, the faces, the whispers, the betrayal. It was proof, irrefutable, cruel evidence of what she'd done. And it made me realize that I hadn't just gotten revenge, I'd taken back my power. I'd proved to myself that I was capable of seeing through the lies, of fighting back even when I thought I was broken. I also knew I had to move on. That meant cutting out everything that reminded me of her. No more texts, no more calls, no more memories. I deleted her number, erased the chat logs, and threw away the fake blood-stained shirt I'd used as part of my sick plan. I wanted her gone from my mind and my life. That evening, I sat in my favorite chair, poured myself a glass of whiskey, and looked out at the quiet streets outside. I thought about all the advice I'd give to someone else in my situation. Trust your instincts, don't let betrayal define you, and never let anyone take your dignity without a fight. I'd done all that and more. I'd shown her that betrayal comes with a price. I realized I'd been angry and hurt, yes, but I was also stronger than I'd ever been. That pain had forced me to face what I'd ignored for too long. I'd learned that even in the darkest moments, there's a flicker of hope and a chance to rebuild. I'd start over, not just to escape her, but to find myself again. So I made a promise to myself that night. I'd rebuild my life piece by piece. I'd find happiness on my own terms without her shadow hanging over me. I'd be cautious, yes, but not afraid. And most importantly, I'd trust myself more than I ever had before. Because in the end, betrayal taught me one simple truth. The only person responsible for my happiness is me. And I'm more than capable of shaping a future that's free from lies, false walls, and broken promises. That's the real victory, and the best revenge of all.